Hi, guys. Today I'm going to get to read a couple chapters of the book, Help, I'm a Prisoner in the Library. So, this is part 4 of this chapter book. I'm really excited to be able to sit here and read it with you. It's been very exciting so far. Have you been following along with Miss Sarah? So, now we are about to start When the Banshee Cries. And in the last chapter, remember we ended it where there was a large room and the papers were swirling up from Miss Fenton's desk, moving in circles, dipping and gliding in a silent dance in the air. So now we're moving on to the next chapter. I want to go home, JoBeth wailed when she could speak again. I don't like it here. This place is haunted. Mary Rose nodded. The ghostly movement of the papers was frightening. She wished there was some place they could hide until daylight came. The basement door, Miss Fenton explained. It must have blown open somehow. She took the candlesticks away from JoBeth. You girls can stay here or come with me. I'm going to investigate. The girls rushed to her side as she began to leave the room. They felt that if they looked back, they would see the figures in the kid hack turning to stare after them. Anything was better than that. She's awfully bossy, JoBeth whispered to her sister. I bet she doesn't even like kids. I don't like children who handle displays and take things that don't belong to them, Miss Fenton snapped. Or children who call her bossy either, JoBeth thought. Sighing. Miss Fenton led them directly to the basement door, which was swinging back and forth. Ghosts! Miss Fenton muttered. She examined the door. The lock doesn't catch. I'll have to have that fixed. It's so cold, Mary Rose shivered. Why is it so cold? A stream of chilly air was coming up from the basement. There must be a window open down there. Come along, girls, come along, she repeated as the girls held back. We'll need the light from both candles. Miss Fenton was already on her way down the steps, walking very carefully. Mary Rose followed, holding one hand in front of the candle to keep it from blowing out. That meant JoBeth had to walk last again. She wished there was some way she could go down the steps backwards. It would be better to look into the darkness rather than to have to creep up behind. It would be better to look into the darkness rather than have it creep up behind her. They were almost to the bottom of the stairway when Miss Fenton said, I hear a cat. That is not a cat, JoBeth said in a faint voice. It's a banshee. A what? Mary Rose cried. A banshee, JoBeth nodded her head. She had just finished reading a book of Irish fairy tales. Don't you even know what a banshee is? That's a spirit that cries under the window. When the banshee cries like that, it means someone is going to die. The candle trembled in Mary Rose's hand. You just quit it, JoBeth. You just quit it right now. You're only trying to scare me. There are no banshees in this house, Miss Fenton's voice was firm. One look at her face, and the girls could see that Miss Fenton wouldn't allow such a thing in her library. I declare, I've never met anyone as jumpy as you. Everything has to be perfectly reasonable and have an explanation. You should try to control your imagination, young lady. Miss Fenton's head had begun to throb again, and her swollen wrist ached. She was sorry she had snapped at JoBeth, but everything seemed out of control. Vilmer Fenton didn't like things to be out of control. It was unsettling. It's this spooky old house. It's worse than the wax museum, and I thought that was scary. I won't be afraid to go there now, not after being here. The very idea, Miss Fenton was insulted. This happens to be a lovely old house. Don't mind my sister. Mary Rose was trying to soothe the librarian's feelings, but Miss Fenton's only reply was, Watch the last step. It's broken. She held her candle high so the girls could see the step. They could also peer in the basement, which seemed to go on and on until it vanished into the darkness. Why is everything so big in this house? JoBeth complained. It was the way Grandfather Fenton built. Oh! JoBeth had just bumped against her bandaged wrist. For a moment, Miss Fenton felt so sick from the pain that she almost dropped the candle. There it goes again. JoBeth ran back up a few steps and stopped. Mary Rose shivered. She could feel icy air all around her. Could JoBeth be right? Was there such a thing as a banshee? Look, Miss Fenton was pointing to a window high up in the wall of the basement. There's your banshee. Oh, poor little thing. Look, JoBeth. It is a cat, and it's half in and half out of the window. He must have tried to get in out of the blizzard, and the window closed down on him. Oh, poor little thing. No wonder he's crying. And that accounts for the air that moved the papers around upstairs, Miss Fenton added. And that's what I mean about too much imagination. JoBeth was quiet. It's easy to be smart after you know the facts, she thought. But Mary Rose had been scared too. She sure was. And Miss Fenton must have been scared as well, even if she pretended otherwise. There's a ladder behind the steps, Mary Rose. You and JoBeth pull it over to the window. Be careful when you reach for the cat, and pull the window shut and lock it. Miss Fenton was still giving advice when Mary Rose climbed the ladder. She pushed at the window and pulled the cat free. As she carried the shivering animal down, she murmured softly in its ear. She handed the cat to JoBeth, who cuddled it against her body to warm it. You and your banshees, Mary Rose said, after she locked the window and came down. You almost had me believing you. JoBeth ran her hand over the cat's fur. It could have been a banshee, she told herself stubbornly. In a house like this, anything was possible. But she kept her thoughts to herself. The next chapter, Madame Morgana sees all and knows all. Now that we've rescued the cat, Miss Fenton said, we might just as well get back upstairs to the fire. The poor thing needs warming. I wish someone would rescue us, JoBeth mourned. Oh, only if we screamed, nobody would hear us. Shipwrecked sailors send up flares, Mary Rose had seen that once in the movie on TV. Flares? Miss Fenton said in a strange voice. Rockets! Of course! We'll shoot off rockets. The two girls looked at each other. JoBeth huddled against her sister. There she goes again, she whispered. Rockets? Mary Rose repeated. We'll shoot off rockets? What kind of rockets? JoBeth squeezed the cat so hard it gave a protesting cry. Don't you girls know what rockets are? Miss Fenton demanded. Roman candles, fireworks, 4th of July! Whoosh! She waved her good arm in the air. Beautiful colors exploding in the sky. She looked up to the ceiling, and the girls did too, almost expecting to see fireworks. The trick now is, Miss Fenton said as she somewhat thought in a doubtful voice, finding them down here. We'll just have to pick our way around things very carefully. You girls will have to open a few boxes for me. She began to walk deeper into the basement. Mary Rose followed quickly. JoBeth put the cat down and went after them. Now, mind you, don't bump into the animals, Miss Fenton warned. The sisters stopped walking. Animals? In the basement? What kind of animals? What kind of animals? JoBeth whispered. I think I'm going to faint. I am. I'm going to faint. She squeezed her eyelids shut. Children don't faint. Grown-ups faint. Anyway, take a look. Mary Rose held her candle high. She had already taken a peek. Come on, open your eyes. When JoBeth took a chance and opened her eyes, she saw the animals directly to her left. There were 4 of them. A lion with its head thrown back, a snarling tiger, a gentle-eyed llama, and a large, graceful swan. All were made of wood. All had once been brightly painted, but all the animals were now faded and peeling in spots. From a merry-go-round, Miss Fenton told them. My grandfather was a collector. He loved wooden figures. The house is full of them. I think the box I'm looking for is behind the hurdy-gurdy. Come along. Rush, rush, rush. That was Miss Fenton. JoBeth wished she wouldn't hurry them so. She wanted to stroke the merry-go-round animals, especially the tiger. He was so fierce and scary, it gave JoBeth a delicious cold feeling right down to her spine. What's a hurdy-gurdy? Mary Rose asked. I'm glad she asked, because I don't know what it is either. A hurdy-gurdy? Why, that's a hand organ. What we used to call a barrel organ. A man used to wheel one of these things around in the city streets. He'd stop where he saw a lot of people, and he'd turn the handle. See? Miss Fenton cranked the handle, and a tune stumbled out. It sounded rusty and tired, as if some of the notes were missing. When I was a little girl, my father took me to New York one time. We saw the hurdy-gurdy man, the children dancing in the streets while he kept turning the handle on the organ. Even some of the women danced too. Sometimes the hurdy-gurdy man had a monkey with him, dressed up in a little red suit and a funny little hat. When the man stopped playing, the monkey would come around and hold out his cap, and people would drop money into it. Then he'd bring it back to the hurdy-gurdy man. I like that, Mary Rose laughed. Why don't they do that anymore? Old-fashioned, like the dresses you put on in this house. I wish we had more light down here. Miss Fenton put out her hand and touched a glass case sitting high in the box, while the girls walked around the hurdy-gurdy, admiring its large red-spoked wheels and trying to turn the handle. Miss Fenton picked up a coin from beside the glass case and dropped it into the slot. Flashing lights and flickered on and off, white and purple and red. It lit up the head and arms and bright green blouse of a waxen-faced woman with large black eyes, glaring eyes. Only the upper half of her body could be seen. She had coal black hair, tightly pulled back, long glittering earrings, and a spot of bright red on her cheeks. Now her tight lips parted and she spoke. She turned her head and stared right at Mary Rose and JoBeth. Put another penny in, she commanded, and I will tell your fortune. Kill 'em more cranky, Miss Fenton swore. I didn't mean to startle you. That's Madame Morgana. She tells fortunes. I just thought we could use some more light in here. She runs on batteries. It was lighter, but the girls didn't feel braver. It was better in the dark, JoBeth said. Well, I've got to feed her pennies till I find the rockets. She dropped another coin in and walked around. Madame Morgana. Come along, Mary Rose. I'm sure I found it. You'll have to get it open for me. Mary Rose followed Miss Fenton, but she kept staring over her shoulder at Madame Morgana, whose arms were moving one way while her head was turning another in tiny jerking motions. Madame Morgana picked up a card and slipped it into the small opening under the glass. This is your fortune, her creaky voice told JoBeth, who was standing and staring up at the strange figure, watching her with wide eyes, her mouth open in surprise. Read it and believe. Madame Morgana sees all and knows all. The card came out. As JoBeth reached up to take it, the lights in the glass case went out. But JoBeth could still see her dimly in the light of the candles. Put another penny in, Miss Fenton called. I think Mary Rose and I have found the rockets. Never mind, Mary Rose shouted hastily. It's the right box. We don't need Madame Morgana anymore. Jo Beth looked down at the card in her hand. It said, strange things will happen to you in a place of mystery. You will fear for your life, but you will be saved. Tell no one of your adventures. They will not believe you. Jo Beth stared up at Madame Morgana again in amazement. How could a wooden figure, and only half of one at that, have known about all the things that had happened to her and Mary Rose? Going back upstairs, Jo Beth was very thoughtful. I'm going to show you real quick. There's a picture in here of Madame Morgana. Going back upstairs, Jo Beth was very thoughtful. While Miss Fenton examined the rockets when they were back on the second floor, Jo Beth told her sister, this isn't a house. It's a museum. I'll tell you one thing, Mary Rose. If we ever get out of here alive, I'm never in my whole life going to tell people about this place. Why not? That's silly. People will want to know, won't they? Where we've been all this time and all? Jo Beth shook her head stubbornly. I'm not going to say a word. She looked up at the Mina bird, who had flown back into his cage some time ago. Mina bird? I may have said that wrong. I'll have to look that word up. Do you ever look up words when you read stories? I don't know what the Mina bird is. She looked up at the Mina bird, who had flown back into its cage some time ago. It had been dozing when they had come back to the room. Now it said sleepily, off with their heads. Not one word to anybody about anything, Jo Beth added firmly. And that's where we're going to end today. Join us tomorrow for the conclusion of Help, I'm a Prisoner in the Library. It's pretty exciting. I can't wait to find out what's going to happen next. Bye, guys.